Well, welcome back. In this episode, we're taking a look at during foster care. We'll explore what is foster care and what is respite, not with this guest, but our next guest. And we all likely know something about foster care. We might have some thoughts on children and youth, and some of us might have even heard about respite. But who is engaged in this kind of work, and what can they teach us as we consider the state of foster care crisis in our area? To help us explore this, we've invited our friend Amanda. Amanda is a local caseworker with a local children and youth office. She's very invested professionally in foster care and fully aware of the challenges facing our region. But personally, Amanda and her husband, Jeff, are coordinators for a support team for a local foster care family. And as we considered who can help us understand foster care and the challenges facing our area, we thought of Amanda because of her role and her heart for helping others and her faithfulness to engaging personally and professionally. So thanks for joining us, Amanda. We are so glad to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
You all right to just dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So our first question is, what does your work with CYS look like? What does CYS's role in addressing the foster care crisis look like? And then what are CYS's strengths and limitations?
Boom, that's a lot.
And we can take that one by one. So
Sure.
I can remind you if you need.
And even just super quick, can you just say what CYS is?
Sure.
Like, what does it mean?
Yep.
Yeah, Children and Youth Services. So you'll hear that a lot. That's just how we go by ourselves, our titles. CYS caseworkers. I personally, for my role, am an intake caseworker. So that means that any case that comes into the agency under a certain umbrella of a general protective services report comes into certain teams, not just my own, but a few other teams that also handle those reports, and they're assigned out to caseworkers. So what I'll do is go knock on the family's door, meet with them, meet with the kiddos, work with the family on what these struggles might be that they're having challenges with every day, what the kids' behaviors look like, and really what the overall concern is, and making sure that those kids are safe in that home and that they can remain in that home safely. If there's a situation where we walk into a home and we're assessing this report and determine that that child cannot reside in that home safely, that's when we'll step in and hopefully just bring in some supports that the family can identify as to where that child can go, as to where that child can reside for at least the duration of this report, and if something can be resolved. In the case where it can't be resolved and it's something that that child needs to be removed immediately for an immediate concern and the danger that's there, we'll take them out and we'll place them either with a kinship foster family, or so that's somebody who's a friend or a family member who that family can identify, or a formal foster care if they can't identify anybody.
Yeah. That's great. And so as you think about what are the strengths of CYS, like what are the advantages, or like what do you bring to the table? Because I think a lot of people have which you know very well, like CYS, even people who don't know anything about it, it's like, wait, this group like separates families. But what are the strengths of CYS as you think about it in the system?
Yeah, I feel like obviously being within that system and seeing it day in and day out, there's a lot of strengths.
Yeah.
We're very family oriented. We deal with families every single day. That's how we help people. It's just by working with their families, working to make sure that they do have supports that they need. But we also have an engagement initiative that's called Family Engagement Initiative. And that's where we speak with the family about any like additional relatives. It doesn't even have to be local. It could be just across the world, anywhere that they have who are willing to be supports for that family, whether it's sending a birthday card, even just calling to say, hi, how are you? It doesn't have to be anything major as to like, I'm going to take that child every other weekend to Hershey Park. It doesn't have to be a major commitment, but it's making sure that that family understands that if they have the supports in that family, they can pretty much conquer anything. And if they are having a bad day where they feel like they just need someone to help them out, that there's someone there they can call. So we're always trying to encourage that. We have that whole family engagement initiative as really a big stepping stone for that family to move past what they're working on right now and past what those struggles are. And that in the event that that child has to be placed in the future, if something comes up, we have that whole list of relatives and whole list of friends where we can call right away and just avoid the placement with formal foster care. We also have reunification. So if kids are placed in foster care or just are out of the home placed, that's something that we enjoy seeing is that reunification with parents because they've worked really hard. They've met all their goals. They've seen, the light at the end of the tunnel of something that could be really dark for them, that could be really hard for them to conquer. But with CYS's assistance, they can overcome that, and they can have all those supports and services behind them and their family to be able to have their kids back at home.
Could you just, I just want to touch on one thing you said about if kids need to be removed, where do they go? One of the things we heard from you in your pre-production conversation with us is a lot of times there aren't places for kids to go right away.
Right.
So they might have to stay at an agency. Like what happens? Could you say a little bit more about what happens? Because it seems like it is an implied limitation even in you all can do the process, but you need places to send the kids into that process. And if you don't have places, where do they go? Like, talk to us about what happens to kids and what would be better in your mind to happen with kids than have to stay at an agency.
Right. There's a lot of better things than staying at an agency for a kid. It's not fun. It's not home. It's not warm and cuddly for them to be able to sleep well. So there are instances, even recently, that we've had caseworkers had to sleep at the agency with kids because there just are no foster homes that are willing to take kids. We completely understand that's a big yes for people to say, to be a foster parent or to even be a home where kids can go temporarily for a day or two until that formal foster home is found or until a more permanent place is found for them. But that's what we need. We can go through the whole assessment. We can go through all the paperwork and placing that child, but we can't make a house just appear out of nowhere if there's no foster family to take them. So in order to not have that happen, we would love to have just more foster families. We would love for people to be able to say yes, even though we understand that's a big yes. You're opening your home to not only that child, but that whole child's family and any traumatic history that child has gone through, just those hurts that they have. But there's so much positivity that you can speak into that child, and just speaking life into them is so important. And so if you're willing to say yes, it's a scary step, but there's so many people who can support you in saying that yes. You're not alone.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that quite a bit throughout this possible and likely podcast of the way that we can support families who have said yes. Could you just talk to us a little bit, Nate? I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here, but that first question that we asked you, could you say a little bit more? One of the things I heard from you is that people need to understand that process. They need to understand the process, and I think CYS is terrible. Talk to us a little bit more about like how every situation's different and why it's a last resort. Because you all do a lot of things that people don't know about before kids are removed. People just think CYS just removes kids.
Right.
Can you talk to us about a little bit more about the process of what you try to do before kids are removed?
Sure. So from step one, even walking into that family's home and sitting down with the caregivers and speaking about the concerns, we're also speaking about who are your supports. We really press hard into that. We want them to have supports. We want them to understand that that person they identify as a support doesn't necessarily have to be there 24/7. It could be just, hey, can you watch my kiddo for a couple of hours? I have to run to the store, or there's an emergency that just came up. Can you help me? It's just, someone who can help them out in a time of need. So really pressing into those supports and asking just about every time we go see that family, if anyone came up, if you've thought of anybody, here's my card, call me or text me if you think of someone. We'd love to just make a note, just that you have supports. And I want you to hear yourself say that you have supports because you might not believe that you do. But that's just from the get-go. We do that. There's just a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we see kids on my caseload. It's every other week. So even between those few weeks that I'm not seeing a family possibly, I'm still working on phone calls. I'm still working on different pieces of paperwork to make sure that they have what they need. It is a process. It's long. We understand families don't want us in their hair. We don't want to be there if we don't have to be there. We just want to help you. We want to make sure you have the supports you need. And if we can say, okay, I think you're okay to go and be on your own now, we'll allow that and we'll close that case out.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And so it's not just a knee jerk. Sometimes I'm sure there's cases where it's like, oh, we didn't know this kid. This is a clear case. We got to get this kid out.
Right.
But often these are kids and families who, to what you're saying, are known by the community, known by children and youth,
Right.
and you're trying to do all the support you can, and then it might arrive at a place where they have to be removed. So
Right.
yeah, is that fair?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you talk to us about what is the current state of foster care in our area, particularly as it relates to our sense is that it's overwhelmed, and would you agree, and why is it overwhelmed?
There's just so many kids that are in that foster care system because there's not enough support just within that person's own family, or they might not, like I've said, might not feel like they can call on someone because they don't want to burden them. They don't want them to be involved with the case. There's just a multitude of reasons as to why someone might not contact a family member. It is true also, a lot of families just don't have family around here. They're on their own. They've moved from different countries over here, that kids end up being in foster care for that, different situations that might arise. But just the crisis, there's just not enough foster parents to, they don't have 700 rooms in their house that they can just take all these kids. Yeah. So there's limitations as to how many kids they can take, and the genders and the ages and the rooms that you have. And, I'm sure there's many foster families out there that wish they could take every single kid that they get a call about. I'm sure of it, because they are sweet, sweet kids. But there's also kids who need really specialized foster homes, that there aren't enough of those either. Kids with autism, kids with really bad emotional disturbance disorders, just those specialized kind of niches. They also need some more parents to be willing to go to the trainings for those, or to be willing to understand more of that process as to how does this child need to be loved and need to be cared for. So I think that's just the biggest thing. There's just not enough.
Could you speak just a little bit to COVID and how it's impacted this, either in your access to kids or in availability of families? Yeah, just speak to the impact of COVID, if that's okay.
Sure. So obviously everybody across the globe had some sort of an impact with COVID, whether it's to their own family or to their job, but specifically with children and youth. These kids are coming home from school. That was during the school year, so schools are shutting down. That's mandated reporters not seeing them. Everyone's staying inside because there's just so much uncertainty out there with this virus. So a lot of kids weren't playing outside. They weren't going to friends' houses. They weren't doing normal kid things where people would see them. So for a little while there in the beginning, our amount of referrals that were coming into our agency dropped fairly significantly. But then once the schools kind of figured out their online learning stuff and the cameras were being turned on inside homes, that's when we started to get more of an uptick in referrals, which we loved that these referral sources were able to also see possibly the inside of homes, because that just gave us more of an inkling as to what are we even walking into. So COVID was strange. We were all trying to figure out how can we still ensure for safety of kids if no one's seeing each other, you're not allowed to be around each other. So thankfully our agency provided us with PPE gear. I mean, we went out in the Marshmallow Man suits. We went out
like
in
Monsters Incorporated.
Yeah, it was a little scary for the kids. They told us to decorate them, make it fun. It was an interesting time for everybody. But
Did you decorate yours?
I didn't.
You didn't?
I don't know. I already looked like a marshmallow, so I thought it was
feel
funny enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like whether you are a giant marshmallow or a giant marshmallow unicorn on it.
Right.
Like either way, it's like,
kind of
that's
fun.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were warm in the summer, though. I'll tell you that. In
I
the
can imagine.
Midsummer, they were warm. But
so maybe if COVID comes back, like
we'll
rampant,
decorate.
then, you'll decorate.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely decorate.
Let's hope not, though.
Next time.
Next wave.
We can just do it for fun and have COVID not come back.
Exactly. Yeah. There are still some families who are rightfully so kind of weary or have some medically fragile kids in the home that we take any precaution that's necessary to be able to go see them. So we were able to still go see kids after a short period of time of us just doing virtual visits with families. But even that had, its downfalls, because not everybody we work with has access to a phone with a camera or a laptop with a camera or Wi-Fi or anything like that. So we were doing what we could. If it was us driving by the home and having the kids stand outside and like waving. And that was our visual of the kiddo for the week because we didn't have major concerns. It was we knew everything was okay in the home. It was just a follow-up. We were allowed to do that because our administration allowed it. But it was interesting. COVID really, took a turn on everybody and just working on being short-staffed to begin with. And then also trying to figure out how are we going to make a turn with this.
I think that COVID is one of the reasons that we wanted to start this podcast is because things were bad before COVID and they've only been amplified. And so we want to get as many of our listeners involved as possible in whatever capacity that they can. And I feel like that's kind of the next section we're going to move into is how can they get engaged? So what would make CYS less overwhelmed? How can our listeners assist CYS and help address the foster care crisis?
So making us less overwhelmed, you can become a caseworker and work with us.
There you go.
Just take on these cases yourself and get trained, and you're not going to be alone in it. A lot of people have made career changes and just gone into social work. If you're a people person, you'll love it. They might not love you for a little while, the families, because we're coming in and we're a complete stranger and we're saying, hey, someone said something about you and it might be completely false, but we have to be here anyway. So you'll have all this training. You're more than welcome to come in and be a caseworker with us. We would love to have more people and help train them and just let them see the raw reality that is, the areas that we're living in. So, and what these kids need. But that's definitely a way to be less overwhelmed, just more people.
What are the qualifications for that? Like if our listeners are thinking, oh, I might be interested in that, but what would they need to be able to apply or get to that place?
So a lot of county agencies are almost doing like a rolling, like hiring type deal where there's always at least some sort of casework position out there that's open every once in a while. So a bachelor's degree is usually what we're looking for. Criminal justice, social work, social welfare, psychology. I mean, there's just a broad array that you would qualify for, which is great because bringing those backgrounds all together is just this beautiful combination of people who are really good in certain areas and can help other people. So that's really the biggest qualification. You'll get training on the job right away, but the biggest thing is just having that bachelor's degree.
Cool. What are some of the other long-term and short-term ways that our listeners can help?
Long-term, just keep supporting. Like if you have things that even in your home you're looking to get rid of that are, kid beds or just like toys, or you have an overabundance of diapers from a little one that is not so little anymore, you can feel free to donate those. We're always looking just to have kind of a stock of things because whenever we do get placements and we have to remove kids from homes, it's different ages. So sometimes they come with absolutely nothing with them because the home, just didn't allow that. So they may need clothing. They may need diapers. They may need a winter jacket. So many things. There's also backpacks of hope, which I think a lot of people have heard about. We have a whole storage area in our agency that anytime a kid's placed, they get a backpack. So that's at least like PJs and a toothbrush for the night and a toy. Just depends on what's in the backpack. But, donating your time to that kind of an organization is really helpful for children and youth agencies long term to just keep doing that and making sure the kids have what they need. But short term, just keep loving. Like caseworkers have hard days. They have long days. So just if you know one, lifting them up and just praying for them. And for the kids, just pray for all those kids. If you see any kid in the area, just, I know I find myself a lot of times just saying a quick prayer. Don't even know them, but making sure that they have a safe and a good day. Yeah.
One of the things I love to do is watch movies. And you mentioned a movie. Can you tell us why people should watch the movie? Do you remember what you said? Which movie it was?
So I love Instant Family.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's such a good movie.
Homework assignment.
It's a unique film. Everybody, stop, hit pause on this and go watch Instant Family.
Absolutely. I love that movie.
We'll put a link to it in the show notes, but keep going.
So it's It's a great movie, just of a single depiction of what one case in kids going through the children and youth system and into foster care can look like. Every single case is so different. Kids don't always get removed. They can stay home. I deal with a lot of kiddos who stay home, but in this movie, it depicts a sibling set of 3 going through the children and youth system and being removed from home and going through multiple different foster homes, and just what that does to kids and what kind of a loving and supportive home they need. And these kids don't always understand that, oh, you're going to be there forever. Like, what does that even mean for me? I don't even know what forever is. They may have had absent parents or parents at the home, but essentially absent because, the oldest is parenting the youngest. So this movie is just such a sweet and happy depiction of what the ultimate goal of a formal foster care can be for kids would be adoption. So definitely a great depiction of a case that kids can go through and what that can look like for them.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and we appreciate that. And I think one of the things I'm taking away from you, and we're not quite at takeaways, but it's just the reminder again that someone always finds vulnerable children.
Mm-hmm.
And you are one of those people. You and your colleagues are people who are trying to find them first because they're not alone very long, right? And so someone always finds vulnerable children. And so if you are looking for a way to get involved, foster care is a way to find them first because someone's trying to whisper something into their ear and influence them in some way, and they go somewhere, whether they're, having to stay in a less than ideal circumstance because there's nowhere for them to go or no one has seen them, or they are removed from their home, which is traumatic in and of itself, even in a difficult environment, like removing a kid, and then they're having to sleep in an agency because there's no home for them to go into, or they're in a home that maybe was willing to, but is burned out and tired, and they really shouldn't be caring for kids, but they're willing to, and it's the best available. What I'm hearing from you, Amanda, is that we need to step in and do this because these kids go somewhere. They don't we can be aware of the problem and then just say, oh, these kids, it'll just work out. Like somebody will step up.
Right.
And you're saying, and we're hearing from children and youth services around our region, we need more people to step up because it's not nearly enough.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. It's almost that bystander effect of, oh, someone else will call if there's an emergency that you see, but this is a real emergency that might not have, blinking lights around it, but these kids need somebody, and they need that positive influence in their life, and those people who can be there to support them and to walk through life with them and to just love on them, because a lot of times they don't know what that's like. But yeah, these kiddos definitely who end up in the foster care system, there needs to be more foster parents. It's just, we're at a shortage right now, and it's unfortunate that we had to get to that point in the beginning, that we even have to remove that many kids, that we have to request for more people to step up to be foster parents. But it's a sad reality that we see every day. So yeah, don't be afraid to say yes.
Yeah, one fact that we heard recently from a children and youth agency in our area was they had 50 kids in the last month that went unplaced. And that's regionally, like in our area, they had 50 kids in 1 month that went unplaced because there just weren't enough homes. And I think that that's representative of what you're saying. And that's, it's not just a number, but these are kids and personality and a story and a journey that they're still on. And they have to leave and they have to go somewhere, and they might be, in a group home, or they might be having to leave. Often this lady was telling me that they have to leave, and go, they might find a placement location, hours away from all that they know and their friends and what they're used to. And so, yeah, it just is really difficult when, Nate and I have said a lot during the production of this that there's a lot of challenges in this world that have no earthly solution, but the foster care crisis shouldn't be one of them, right? There's enough Christians, there's enough churches that if we all instead of asking, should we do this? Like, how can we respond is the better question that we think that God's inviting us into. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of foster care, could you just speak a little to what if people wanted to become foster parents, what should they do? Because you said about the jobs, like being a caseworker, to reach out to your local children and youth services, and likely there's a role, and often they come up. But could you give any counsel or advice if someone wanted to become a foster parent? Where would you point them?
Honestly, just Googling local foster care agencies. If you want something especially like really close to your home, not something that's further out or in a different county, they're looking for your county anyway. So even if you reached out to a different county, they'd probably redirect you. So just Googling that. I mean, there's Bear. There's just so many. Bear's just the first one I think of because we've had so many run-ins with them. But just calling and asking, like, hey, I want to become a foster parent. I mean, that is music to those, people's ears there, that they are just going to love that. So they'll never be disappointed. But even just calling and just asking, and there's always information on websites you can read up on. If you know a foster parent, ask them questions. I mean, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them. So just reaching out and starting to learn about it, and just seeing where the needs are, seeing what kinds of foster homes they're looking for, specifically if you're able to train in certain areas or just become a regular foster home.
Yeah, and we'll put in the show notes on possibleandlikely.com. We'll put on the show notes list of foster care agencies in the area and placement agencies, and with links to their websites and videos to learn more. And soon we'll also have information about, and it might already be there by the time you're listening to it, information nights that we'll be hosting around the region for people to learn more about how they can step in and hear from foster parents about their personal journeys and get your questions answered on Zoom and in person. So look for those there in the show notes at possibleandlikely.com, and just click on during, and there'll be some notes there for that. Nate, what are your takeaways from our time with Amanda? I really appreciate all the things she said.
Yes, me too. I think I have two. The first one is just being patient with caseworkers. I think that was something that, a lot of the conversation around caseworkers, around CYS, is negative, and it really isn't fair to them from what we've heard today and from what I can tell. And just their job is very difficult. And so to encourage them whenever we can, just like we're grateful to have Amanda on the show right now, encourage them whatever way that you can. And then number two, in regards to foster families, becoming a foster family, whether short-term or long-term, I think especially the point about there not being enough families that are trained, specialized training for kids with autism and other special needs. And so if that's something that really pulls at your heartstrings as a listener, and is a place where God has gifted you already to love on kids who experience life that way, they need you, and we would love to have you take them into your home. So, did you have any other ones?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that stuck out to me was the Family Engagement Initiative. This is new to me, and it's just really helpful. And I knew that you all do a lot of work pre-removal, and that's how CYS is known, right? Even by people who have never used them or interacted with them, and that's just not, to what Nate's just saying. It's not fair. You all have very difficult jobs. I know my wife was a social worker right out of college, and her job was to recommend to the judge whether, one of her roles was to recommend to a judge whether a kid should be removed or not. And just terrible. I mean, like, what a terrible job. Yeah. But she did it so faithfully, and there were a lot of tears in our house, but it was so eye-opening to me of just the trauma that these caseworkers that like yourself are in every day, because it's often the choice between two less than ideal options. And so to make that choice is difficult. And we are just so thankful that folks like you are willing to engage with families proactively, stay in the game. And what a sweet opportunity, invitation you've given us to just find a caseworker that you know and encourage them, because this was so hard, as you talked about. This was so hard before COVID, and COVID's only made that worse because of isolation. You just don't know what you don't know. But your family engagement initiative that you mentioned was just really, really striking to me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that you didn't say? That no pressure at all, but if there's anything else.
Pressure. I feel like a lot of people think to be a foster parent, you have to be this very specialized person, or you have to be a teacher, or you have to have a certain occupation that would lead you into, doing well as a foster parent, when really you can say yes and you'll get all that training, and you're going to be equipped well through these foster care agencies that will train you, and it's ongoing training. It's not just once and done. It depends on the agency, but I know at least yearly you'll have to be, do some sort of training or recertification. So you're never alone in that. I love the foster care initiative that's here at West Shore. I mean, I have just grown to love our foster family that we support. You end up being friends with them. I mean, they become part of your family. And I think that's just such a beautiful takeaway from that initiative, because that's, to me, like, I just feel like God smiles down on that. And that's exactly what we're supposed to do, is being a church body like that and being a family, and just being able to love on those kids too that are in their home. But yeah, don't be afraid to say yes. I know it's scary. I know that's opening your home to some of those kids that have some really serious trauma in their background or rough home lives, but they need you. And you also need them, but you don't know it yet. And I think that's just the most beautiful thing that I've seen with foster families too. It's just how those pieces of the puzzle just come together so beautifully. And then when reuniting happens, it's hard, and that's going to be hard. But you can at least rest assured that you've done everything you can to equip that child in going home. And hopefully you can continue that relationship. But if not, just rest well with that.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. And this has been so helpful to me. I learned a lot, and I've been working with kids for 20 years that come from hard places. And this has just been really eye-opening to me. And, for our listeners and our viewers, this has been a real cursory, high-level view of foster care. And on the possibleunlikely.com website, there is more information, as I said earlier, with links and videos to learn more about foster care and opportunities to come to info sessions to learn more and explore the journey. What's your next step during foster care? So you can just click on during, and then there's show notes and information about that there. But foster care is one step in during, but another one is respite and short-term relief for foster parents who need a break or need to go away for a funeral or have some other plans that don't allow for a child to cross state boundaries. And so we'll be looking at during foster care, but from a perspective of respite. And what is respite? How can you be involved in respite? Because the point of this all is not to convince you to do any one thing, but to expose you to the foster care crisis in general, that this is a foster care crisis that we can no longer avoid, that we've got to see it. We've got to, in like the Good Samaritan story, not walk around it. It is here. And if we don't see it, that's on us, not on these kids or on these families. We can't walk around it, but we got to go toward it. And because it's happening, and God calls us to go toward and love the vulnerable. And so that's what we are called to do, not should we do it, but how will we do it is the question. So we want to continue to give you little drips of information to give you an exposure to the foster care crisis in general, and then introduce you to bridges or pathways to step into the foster care crisis either before, during, or after, so that we can have more than enough. Because as we keep saying, that it is possible that these kids will make it on their own and find their way. It's possible, but it's likely they won't, absent healthy intervention and healthy support, because no one can do this on their own. Even the best people who are equipped in all of the categories, and people like Amanda who are well-trained, well-experienced, no one can do it on their own. But it is also possible And likely that we could rewrite not just the narrative of these kids' stories, but even our own stories, as Amanda was just touching on, that our stories will be profoundly different when we obey the Lord and say, yes, God, I will follow you. I will care for the vulnerable. And so many times we all walk around going like, what is my life? What am I doing? There's got to be more to life than this. And I do think that God knew what he was doing when he says in James, pure and faultless religion is this, ready for it, very clear. There's no abstractness in this, to look after widows and orphans in their distress and to keep oneself pure and holy before the Lord. That when we do what God says, we are better off. And so these kids need it, these families need it, and we need it too. And we can help rewrite the narrative of what's possible and likely, not just in their kids' lives and in our lives, but in our region's well-being. And when we seek the welfare of the place that we've been sent into exile and pray to God on its behalf, we will find our thriving too. So we are so thankful for you, Amanda, and the work that you're doing. And God bless you as you continue that work.
Thank you.